mum of three, and I can say that parenting is one of life's biggest privileges.
We are the generation of mums who are the most afraid of traumatizing our kids because we've got too much information, there's too much out there.
One of the most humbling experiences that a person can go through is raising kids. No matter how calm and collected and intelligent you think you are, as soon as kids arrive on the scene, they shake up your whole world. So I'm a mum of three, and I can say that parenting is one of life's biggest privileges, but it is also a minefield, especially in today's modern age of parenting. Welcome to The Lifestyle Prescription. I'm Rena Annaville, and my guest in the studio is parenting expert, founder of Black and Brown Parenting, and mum of three, Maryam Javaid. Hey, Maryam.
Hi, Rena. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
I know, I've got so much to talk to you about. So first of all, I just want to say, as a parenting expert, do you have the most well-behaved kids in the world?
Oh, no. They're not they're not the most well behaved, and they probably wouldn't say I was the most well behaved as a mother either. I'm sure you could ask them.
What made you become a parenting expert? Was it when you became a mum yourself, you went on this journey?
So do you know what? First of all, Rena, I'm going to say that I wouldn't call myself a parenting expert because I don't think there is an expert on parenting out there. However, my journey really just started when I was looking for support, when I was in probably the darkest place in my life, where I just thought, is this what motherhood is? Really? And I can actually pinpoint that moment where I thought something has to change in my life. It was actually when I had my 2-year-old and I had a newborn, and I was just sat in the living room, and there was, clutter and there was mess everywhere, and I picked up my phone, as you do, but I didn't switch it on, but I could see, the blank screen on your phone. I could see my reflection, and I just thought, who are you? And it wasn't about my physical appearance. My hair was everywhere and I looked like a bit of a tramp. But it wasn't about that. Yeah. It was just internally, I didn't know who I was anymore. And it was that moment I thought to myself, you know what? Something's got to change.
Yeah. I really identify with that. I had an 18-month-old, and then I had a newborn, and it was like, oh my gosh, like you have to really, like, you do lose yourself, right?
You do.
And I think a lot of people... are struggling at the moment because the modern age of parenting means that we're thinking about things more. We're talking about things like mental health. We're thinking, oh my God, it is what I'm doing. Going to have my kid in a therapist chair in years to come. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges of parenting today?
Do you know, I feel like we are the generation of mums who are the most afraid of traumatizing our kids. Because we've got too much information, there's too much out there. And whilst that can be a positive, that we do have access to tools, resources and information, sometimes it's too much. And that too much, we overcompensate. So I would say one of the biggest challenges that we face as parents is maybe just having too much information is probably one of the biggest challenges that we face. And then secondly, it's balancing how we were brought up. Yeah. And wanting to change things, but not overdoing it. So not overcompensating, but trying to find that balance in this modern day age.
Yeah. So do you think that we've kind of lost our own parenting instincts that are within us?
I would say, yeah. I would say absolutely yes. I think I definitely went through a phase where I was constantly looking for what do other people think? Or what does my friend think? Or what does this expert online think? And never really tapping into myself and thinking... maybe I do know what's best for my child, and maybe I just can't hear it or I can't see it because I'm doubting myself constantly.
I mean, I have been through phases, Maryam, I'm not going to lie, and I'm quite ashamed to own up to this, that I thought Gillian Ford, is her name Gillian Ford?
Yes,
I can't remember.
sounds familiar.
The woman who was all about controlled crying. I read her book. That was kind of like the fashion at the time when I had my eldest, right, in 2009. I listened to her more than my own mum, and my own mum was like so upset because I was like, no, I'm doing this controlled crying and you can't pick my daughter up. Like, what is that even about? Like, now I look back and I'm like, oh my God, like, thank God my daughter's okay and she seems to be a well-adjusted person. But when you're just like, why did I not listen? Not that we have to listen to everything.
Yeah.
But there is that thing, right? I know that you're very much about like, okay, let's break generational cycles
Yes.
of bad parenting. But also there is that thing of sometimes we should listen to our mums, right? Or elders in the community.
Yeah, I mean, there's this whole trend of breaking generational cycles, which I absolutely agree with as well. But in the same sentence, I do feel like there's so much wisdom that we can take from our elders as well, where our mums, our grandmoms have had certain experiences that. And I'm the same. Like, I remember when I had my girls, my mum was like, no, you don't do this, you do this. And I thought I knew better. Or I thought, this modern day stuff and these experts knew better. When actually, now, like a decade down the line, I'm like, oh dear, actually, my mum was right.
Yeah, but it is that thing of too much information, because I think I feel like as a woman who was educated here and stuff, and I was like, oh, read books, you'll know what to do. It's a manual. You'll be able to work the child with a manual. Clearly not, right?
No. There's no manual to this parenting stuff, literally.
No, I know. Okay, so let's talk about some of the modern trends, right? Which are these things where it's feeding us all this information, right? One of them is helicopter parent, right? What is this, and how to stop doing it?
Okay, so helicopter parenting it just means micromanaging. You're micromanaging, and I would go as far as saying you're overcompensating for things probably that you didn't have when you was growing up. Because of the influx of information that we have, we want to save our kids from everything. Mistakes they make, let's give an example, even when they're younger and they fall over, we want to save them from that. We want to save them from, the detention. I don't know if they still get detentions, but the detention they get because they didn't do their homework. We want to save them from everything, and that's detrimental, because it comes from a good place as parents, because you don't want to see your child fail, or you don't want to see them make mistakes, because it hurts you as well, seeing them experience those things. But how far is too far? Because if we want to raise well-adjusted kids, if we want to raise kids who have this, intrinsic motivation, self-discipline, all of this sort of stuff, it's not going to come from constantly trying to save them from failing or from making mistakes. And I think this it is connected to having too much information, because I remember growing up and my mum, if I got in trouble at school, I got in trouble at school, and I learnt my lesson myself, as opposed to my mum constantly coming in and saving me.
I mean, I do know parents now who will do their kids' homework just because they want to be like, oh no, we need to get the grades on board and all this kind of stuff. But do you think that a healthier thing for the child would be like, oh, you didn't do your homework, now you're in detention, so you've got to learn? Like, where is that balance? Do you know what I mean?
Do you know what? I think obviously there is a space for reminding the child and guiding them and helping them, saying, okay, you didn't do it last week, therefore, let me sit down with you, let me help you. Is there something that you're stuck on? Is there something that I can help you with? But if it's a consistent pattern where they're not doing it and you're constantly having to save them, then the natural consequence is, well, if it's not being done, then you're going to get that detention. Therefore, that's the consequence that you face. And maybe next time, you think, oh, damn, I don't want to face that again. Maybe, I'll do it, or I'll ask mom for help, or whatever it is that they need.
Back to the generational thing, right? We are immigrants, right? This is not going to apply to everybody who watches, but if you're from a community that has, come from somewhere else, you're here to do well. You've got to work harder. That thing was drummed into us as well. We have to work harder than everybody else, and we want to do well. And look, your grandparents came here with like £5 in their pocket or whatever, and now we have to really do well, and you're going to make use of all these facilities, and you're going to be pushed to be the best you can. Okay. So there's that, right? How much of that is actually respectful to legacy and everything, and how much is like just chill out? Do
you know what I think? I can speak on this from a personal perspective, because being an eldest daughter, the pressure was real.
Altogether, eldest daughter of an eldest daughter.
Same. And then raising an eldest daughter. It's a lot. But that plays a huge part, because even for myself in my own upbringing, growing up, education was, like you said, for those reasons, it was heavily, and I actually found myself doing that in the beginning. I did that with my girls as well, until I had to take a step back, and I thought, do you know what? This is... Because what I found growing up, and I think a lot of the listeners will be able to resonate with this if you come from those type of communities, is I didn't have very much intrinsic motivation. Meaning, when it came to thinking about what do I want to do growing up, I didn't know. Because I found that when your parents are so naggy and they're so, I'm going to do it for you, or I'm going to make you do it, you kind of lose that ambition and that drive yourself. And what I find with children is the more that you push them, or the more you nag them, or the more you force them, they will do whatever it takes to get you off their back. And that's the bare minimum that they will do. They will not do it because it genuinely comes from them, because they have the drive, they have the ambition. So that plays a huge part. So what I found with my own experience and with my clients that I work with is I always advise, take a back seat. Not completely, right? Don't just, not guide them and watch what they're doing. But you know what? Trust them. Trust that they're going to do the right thing. Trust that, actually, they will do their homework. And if they don't, because kids are kids, then obviously that's your place to then step in and guide them. But don't try to save them where they don't need to be saved, where they can learn and grow from the mistakes themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the same thing with you. My dad was very much like, oh, you need to do this. You need to kind of don't go into anything creative. Clearly, I'm doing something that's quite creative now. But, be an accountant to the point of actually inviting accountant family friends over for dinner in a whole thing, which made me then choose that career. And it didn't work out, clearly, because I'm here. But but that whole thing, whereas the grit needs to come from within you. And this is the conversation that I'm actually having with a few people at the moment and friends that have done really well for themselves. And, the kids are in like amazing schools and that kind of thing. And I know a few of these people, right? The kids are in amazing schools and they're living a very nice lifestyle, Dubai all-inclusive kind of lifestyle. Do you know what I mean, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then the kids are like, they're not into something. They don't have the passion for like, oh, I'm going to do this. I want to do this. They're enrolled in a lot of activities. And that's another thing I want to talk about, the overscheduling of things, right? But they're enrolled in a lot of activities, a lot of tuition, this and that. But it's not coming from them. And the parents are frustrated that, oh my God, like, are you spoiled? What's going on? Have we given you too much? Yes. Why don't you want to do anything? Yep. Where is that balance? Because obviously we all want to do well. Whole thing of we've come here, we want to do well. We want to give our kids something better than we had. But then are we raising entitled kids who have no grit?
Yeah, do you know what? I'm going to say we are. I'm actually going to say that we are. Okay. And I think that I've, with the work that I do, I've seen this. The other day I was saying to my kids, I used to go to school on the bus. I think you've probably been on the bus a handful of times.
Oh my, is this that line where you can see we are middle class now? When you have to go on a bus and you're like, oh my God, when is that day going to come when I don't have to take the bus, right? And then the kids are like, oh, can we go on a bus for fun?
Yeah.
You're like, what?
No, do you know what? The other day my 4-year-old said, she goes, Mummy, how are we going to get to this museum? Are we going to take an Uber? And then my sister was like, what? Why does she know what Uber is at 4 years old?
Exactly. So I think that's the difference, right? So what you were saying is we are raising people who, if we're following this route, who are entitled, a bit spoiled.
Yeah, I think we have to find a balance, because obviously the generational wealth does exist, like you said. Yeah. Because obviously every generation we want it to be emotionally, mentally, possibly probably financially better than our parents and grandparents. So that nuance is definitely there. However, there is the overcompensation that you're talking about. But just because you can put your kids into every single activity, is it healthy developmentally for them to be in every single activity? And I think also, just touching on what you said, Rena, I think there's an element of competition as well. I think a lot of us grew up with this, where it's kind of like you have to be the best, and that does go back to, like you said, the communities who have come here to these countries because we want to do, we want to, give meaning or honour the sacrifices that our parents and grandparents 100%. Did. But how far is too far, where then you give them absolutely everything and number one, they may not appreciate it, and number two, it's not doing any good for them developmentally because it's not coming from them and you're simply handing it on a plate.
I'm not going to lie, I have seen with my own eyes people come to this country and literally kill themselves working all hours to get property, to get businesses, and I have then seen that money being squandered away by their kids. I've seen it, and it's painful to watch, and not to say that's going to happen with everybody, but I guess if we're not I don't know what is it then? How can we then make sure that they're well adjusted and they appreciate humility and grit, right? Yeah, that's the things that, personally, I want to instill that in my kids, and I know a lot of people do, regardless of what financial position they're in. How do you think?
Do you know what? That's really interesting. So the other day I was having a conversation with my husband, and we were talking about the fact that I grew up with, my mom was like, you don't have to help me. You just focus on your studies. You just do your work. That's really important. You do that. Whereas he grew up with, no, you've got to help in the house. You've got to help with the cooking. You've got to help with the cleaning. You've got to help, you've got to pay your way. And we were talking about how do you find that balance of giving children responsibility? Because what you're talking about here is, well, if you don't want to raise entitled children who think everything is going to come to them, them, then you've got to give them that level of responsibility and independence. And that simply starts from home. So something as simple as making chores, an essential at home. I say to my girls all the time, and my two older ones moan about it all the time. They're like, well, Mummy, I don't want to do it. And I say, well, I'm not paying you for this because we all live together in this home. Therefore, we all have to partake and do it together. And I think that's a very simple way of trying to, as best as we can, give our children responsibility, give them independence. When they are of that age where they can start working and they're 16, and they want to, let them have a little side thing. They can have a little side hustle if they don't want to work for someone, Those small things, I think, help you. And my dad always said, you like, for us, we don't know the worth of money. And, because they had to come to this country and work there, work very, very, very hard along with everything else going on. So I think small things. So starting from chores, when they can earn money, give them the opportunity and the responsibility to do that so that they won't fully understand, we could never understand the grit that, how hard our parents had to work. And that's fine. We don't expect them to do that. However, in order to not raise entitled kids, we have to give them that sense of independence and that sense of responsibility. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. Let's talk about discipline for a bit, Maryam. So, okay, you and I are probably were disciplined in a different way to what we're doing with our kids. I mean, I think like I probably got off easy when I talk to some people. Like the discipline was like it was basically a chappal, like a slipper, flying around the room to land on your side of your head and then somehow like a boomerang go back to your mom's hand. That was the discipline that we were talking about, shouting, that kind of thing. Now, I know that some people have really struggled with coming to terms with being disciplined in that way, like worse than that, right? And some of us laugh about it. Oh, we got slapped for doing this and we were scared we were going to get slapped. Now, it's something that me and my husband speak about, actually, that there was that fear of you will get a tupper, you will get a slap if you go too far, if you do something bad. And that was a fear. Nowadays, right, it's seen as wrong to smack your kids, to shout at them too much. What is the best way then of disciplining them?
So it's not through shouting at them, obviously. And this is not to say that, you should never, ever, ever shout, because obviously that's impossible. Like, you're a human. But obviously discipline, if we think about what discipline actually means, discipline means to teach. Okay, so when we think about school or when we think about, trying to teach a friend something, it obviously is not through shouting and it's not through screaming. So discipline is simply through open communication, is through guiding your children through the emotions. But, and I think this is very important, discipline is also through having firm boundaries. But when I say firm boundaries, I think for a lot of us having grown up a certain way, when we say boundaries, we instantly think punishment. Boundaries are not punishment. You can be very loving, you can be very kind, but you can also be very firm at the same time when you're not allowed to do something. So I say to my girls all the time, you want to go here. I understand you want to go here. I get why you want to go here. I understand that you might feel like you're missing out. However, for XYZ reason, me and your father have spoken about it and you can't go. And then obviously comes the pouring out of emotions. It's not fair. I get it. I understand. I've been there. I was like that when I was a child. Like, I know what that feels like, but you can't go. And that's just a simple example of boundaries. And I think sometimes we forget that, yes, in discipline being loving, that also does exist.
Yeah. But then do you think that kids should have a little bit of fear of their parents?
Oh, good question. I mean, okay, when we talk about fear though, what are we talking about? Because I think for me, like you were saying, growing up, the fear was it was horrific fear. It wasn't just fear like, oh, mummy's going to be disappointed in me. There is a healthy element of fear because you love your parents and you want them to be proud of you. That's a natural kind of feeling, and you want to that's natural. However, so I'm going to say yes. I think there is a healthy amount of fear where it's like, I don't want mom to be disappointed in me. That's the healthy amount of fear.
I mean, I agree with you. And that's very different from I am going to get a beating. That's very different. Which is, I don't think that's right. And it's quite difficult, isn't it, to break out of certain things, because there's a lot of people who use the expression, oh, well, I turned out all right. That's what my mum and dad did. I turned out all right. But we can't just go around saying that, can we?
So I turned out fine. Yeah, literally. I hear that from everybody. Not everybody, let me not lie. But from a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I probably said it once upon a time myself before I became a mum. And it's not true. Because if we look at ourselves emotionally, mentally, and we look at, you know, how we are in our friendships or in our marriages, we start to realise, actually, I didn't turn out fine and I'm going to do something about it. And I know for me, when I became a mum, that's my most pivotal moment when I realised, Maryam, you didn't turn out fine. And actually, you've got a lot of emotional growing up and work to do. And that's what motherhood allowed me to do. And obviously, I'm constantly on that journey. But I think going back to the fear question, you know, when you love someone, naturally, you don't want them to be disappointed in you. And I think for children, it's the same. However, we're talking about that healthy fear, not the, just to be very... give that disclaimer, that we are talking about the healthy fear where it's kind of like, I want mum to, you know, I don't know. I was going to say mom to be happy with me, but then again, in my head, I'm thinking, I don't know. There's nuances to it, because let me explain what I mean. I think what I mean is, you know, for us growing up, it was like, I never want to disappoint my parents. Therefore, I'm going to do the career they want me to do. Therefore, I'm going to, you know, just say yes to every single thing. That's not healthy, because then you are not an individual person. You're not, it's enmeshment, right? We call it enmeshment, where you are simply doing something because your parents want you to do it. And you're not thinking about your own happiness or what your passions are, or what do you think, you know? So we're not talking about that kind of, I don't want to disappoint them, but we're talking about, I don't want to disappoint them from a place of love, where it's like, you know, well, they respect me and I respect and love my parents. Therefore, you know, when they ask me to do something, maybe I will cooperate and maybe I will listen, or maybe I will take it on board, even if I don't understand it, or even if, you know, it's not my way of thinking.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I like that. And it's kind of give and take, isn't it? A little bit. I mean, I think I'm quite blessed to be an eldest daughter, so I'm the team leader. My dad literally said, oh, you're the team leader of the family, aren't you? He literally said this the other day, and I was like, oh, okay, so I guess I am. But it also meant that I was listened to quite a lot, so I know what that's like. So you know, that's my kind of model of like, oh, I do listen to my kids, because I was, my mum and dad would be like, oh, you know, what colours do you think we should paint the living room, for example? Like, what do you guys want to do? Do you want to do this? And they're just little things, but they make you feel like you're heard. So I feel like I want to, you know, do the same with my kids. So that's what I tried to do. But let's give people some kind of practical things to take away from this as well. So like, you know, I feel I agree with you about the whole thing of how to discipline your kids and boundaries and that kind of thing. But if your kid crosses the line, breaks those boundaries, does something bad, hits their sibling, for example, or whatever, how do you then, I'm not going to say punish, but how do you deal with it? Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to boundaries, I think we've got to be crystal clear as a family on what the boundaries are. So in my home, there's certain words that we can't use. And I know that some of you listeners might be listening, but it's just such normalized words such as like dumb, idiot, stupid. We don't say those things in our home. I know you see them in books. I know you see them everywhere. Yeah. We don't do that. So if one of the girls has, you know, they bicker. Gosh, I don't know if it's a girl thing.
Well, yeah, I've got 3 girls. Just remind me how old are your kids?
So I've got 11, 8 and 4.
Okay.
So there's a lot of bickering that goes on in our home. Sometimes they're the best of friends and then they're enemies. So for us, boundaries are in terms of language, in terms of, you know, like physically like hitting one another or physically doing things to each other, or just not being very nice. So I have to set boundaries probably every single day. And one of the ways of simply doing it is I know that you're angry at her, or I know that you're frustrated, or she's upset you, or something has happened. However, it's not okay to use that language. Is there another way that you can say it? Or is there a way that we can find a solution to this problem without, you know, being physical, or without being hurtful, or without, you know, hurting someone else's feelings? That's a simple way of boundaries. However, I think what I'm seeing more and more in the work that I do because of gentle parenting is that for those who don't know what gentle parenting is, it's just a parenting style which is very much rooted in, you know, empathy, rooted in, you know, helping your children navigate their emotions, very much rooted in, you know, just respectful behavior, both from parent and from child. However, I am going to openly say that I do feel, because of the way that a lot of us have been brought up traditionally, we are overcompensating. So a lot of us say that we're practicing gentle parenting when maybe it's not. Maybe it's very permissive, which is where boundaries come in, because gentle parenting does need boundaries in the way that I've just explained, that
Yeah.
simple example that I've given. Or let's say, for example, with your teenager, you know, you're having a conversation and they say something to you which is rude, it's
Yeah.
disrespectful, you know, and then you can say, well, do you know, I will have this conversation with you when we're both calmed down and we both can be respectful with each other. And maybe that might be in an hour's time, maybe that might be before you go to bed, maybe it might be tomorrow, but you simply state that boundary where it's like, I love you, but you know, we both need to be respectful to each other. I know that you're angry with something that I've said, or you're frustrated with something that I said. I get it, but this is not okay, and we'll talk about it later.
So just explaining.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Do you ever do things like take things away, or would you ever recommend to anybody take things away? Because I have been
Okay.
advised by some people, oh, just take away the iPad, take away the TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done these things. I'm going to say I have, yeah.
Personally, no.
Right.
Personally, no, because I don't think it teaches what you're trying to teach in the same way. And I want to add in time out as well for the younger kids. I don't think that any child goes and sits on the stairs and thinks about what I did was really bad. I'm not going to do it again.
I don't
And
think they
actually,
do.
especially with teenagers as they grow up, do
Yeah.
you know what?
I ain't seen no teenagers sitting on stairs. Anyway,
Okay, so apart from with the teenager, so the example that
Yeah.
you gave of taking that thing
Yeah.
away, I think a teenager, honestly speaking, is going to go, all right, you know what? I'm probably going to do it again, but actually I'm not going to get caught next time. I'm going to find a way to
Yeah.
not get caught next time. So I guess it is about finding the balance of trusting your child that they're going to do the right thing, and knowing that, especially the teenage age, or any age to be honest, but I want to be specific on the teenage age, they are going to push boundaries.
Yes.
They are going to test boundaries, and that's developmentally very normal for them. So for a lot of us as parents, I feel that when they push boundaries, we take it very personally. We think
do.
it's a personal attack, we think it's a reflection of our parenting, but let's just go back to what we were like as teenagers. I'm sure a lot of us, you know, pushed boundaries, did things behind our parents' back. So developmentally, it's very normal. It's not a personal attack, but we've just got to try and navigate it the best way that we can, with as much open communication. Now, I want to just slot in something real quick here is, you know, with my girls growing up, what I've realized is there's some things that, you know, I could be an amazing parent. I've got lots of flaws, but you could have the beautiful relationship with your kids. But there may be some things that they don't want to share with you, simply because you're their mum.
Yeah.
So something that I do is, like, they've got a beautiful relationship with my sisters, with their aunties, and I know that they share things with them that they don't want to share with me, and I'm absolutely okay with that, because those are safe people that they can go and share those things with. And if it's not me, that's fine, but at least I know they're speaking to someone. So I
Yeah.
think that's really important, especially as kids grow up.
Yeah. Do you think, though, that in today's age of parenting, we want to be our kids' friend a little bit too much? I do. I'm not going to lie. I do want to be. But I mean, I do secretly. But then I have said to them, I'm not your friend, so you can't talk to me like that. So it's a bit of a weird one. But do you think that there's that thing where we so badly want to be our kids' best friends? And we want to say to everybody, we're best friends, you know?
Yes. I would say yes, but I think that it comes from a good place in the sense
Yeah.
that, and again, it's the overcompensation, isn't it? Because we didn't have that growing up, so we're
Yeah.
like, I really want that for my children. Having said that, you can be friends with your children, not your best friends, because that's not what they need. They need the loving sort of leadership parent. That's what they need. They might not think they need that, but that's what they need.
Yeah.
But it's not friends as in that peer-to-peer kind of friend relationship. But it's like, you know, having a laugh, you know, spending time with each other, watching a movie, that kind of friends. That's fine, but there is a line.
Yeah. In terms of like of mental health, now we're a bit more aware of mental health and our kids' mental health. Like when I grew up, it wasn't even a thing. Nobody really cared, right?
Yeah.
So how can we tell if a child is struggling with mental health issues?
You will definitely see it in their behaviour first. And I think if you're not conscious of mental health and the way that it's displayed in children, you will think it's just bad behaviour. And I see this a lot, especially in schools. You will see children playing up and, you know, teachers will come home and say things. And your first instance as a parent is, oh my goodness, well, what's wrong with them? And we don't look beneath the behaviour to see, well, you know, maybe they're struggling emotionally. Maybe there's something going on at school. Maybe there's, you know, hormonal changes. Maybe something's happening, you know, in the friendship circle. Maybe there's changes happening within the home that, you know, not that we're not aware of, but we know these changes are happening, but maybe we don't realise how much it's impacting the kids because they absorb everything, don't they?
Yeah, 100%.
So the first thing I would say is how we know is simply through the behaviour that they're displaying.
Okay, and then how do you think is the best way to tackle that? Work with the school, like if we're seeing that something's happening, or maybe a child you think they're not talking to you about something, withdrawn, how best to tackle that, do you think?
if the school are noticing it as well, definitely working with the school together. If it's something at home, then definitely, I think as parents is obviously naturally you're going to get very concerned. Naturally, and you're going to want to fix it right there and then. And we know that with mental health, and I know myself as well, it's not something that can be fixed, in an instant. It's something that you're going to have to chip away and work away with over time. So if it's something you noticed at home, I would say lots of open communication, lots of quality time, and trying to figure out what it is. You probably know what it is if it's something, the atmosphere at home, and maybe you're going through stress and you've been a little bit more snappy and things are happening with you. So sometimes with mental health with kids, it's also working on yourself as well, because if it's coming from you, like you've been stressed, then obviously there's things that you need to work on with yourself. But I would say it's something happens over time.
It's so hard, isn't it, like looking at ourselves, because they feed off our anxiety, right, kids?
Yeah.
So that work that we have to do on ourselves, and it's really difficult to admit sometimes, isn't it?
It is, and I always say that being a mum has helped me to grow so much as a person. Yeah. Honestly, Rena, like I would not be on TV, I would not be here, I would not be speaking on stages if I genuinely believe I wouldn't be doing any of those things if I didn't become a mum, because it helped me to face, and it was really difficult because we have an ego. Yeah. You don't want to believe that it's you. It's so much easier just to blame the kids and blame that they are the reason why you're stressed. But actually, I always say that parenting has so much more to do with us as parents than it actually does to do with our children, because they are our mirrors. I always say this, that the energy that you give out is usually the energy they give off. Yeah. Like if you're in a bad mood, you will notice your kids will suddenly be in a bad mood as well. And especially as a mum, I know it puts a lot of pressure, but I always say, if I'm happy and I'm in a good mood, then the kids are as well. So you kind of set the emotional tone. So working on yourself is, I think it's a non-negotiable.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk about one of the challenges that a lot of parents are going through at the moment, and it's quite a topical one. So the use of smartphones and technology and the impact that has on kids. Being somebody who kind of coaches other parents and stuff, what kind of things have you seen? What trends have you seen? And what issues have you seen as well?
I think social media has to be the biggest issue. It's the social media. It's, the knowing that there's not so much you can control. If they're having access to apps like TikTok and Instagram and all the other social media apps that are out there, the content that they are being shown is not, number one, not age appropriate. A lot of the trends that are coming out, even amongst children, are not safe physically, emotionally, mentally. They're not safe at all. But I think it's the balance of, well, everybody has a phone now.
Yeah. Do your kids have phones?
They don't. And I do not plan to give it to them for a very long time. My eldest has actually been asking, and I've literally outright said, yeah, it's not happening. Not now.
I mean, that is one of my big regrets as a mum, because when my two eldest started secondary school, I gave them a phone and I gave them a smartphone. And in hindsight, I should have given them just a brick phone, right?
Yeah.
To make calls. That is, I honestly feel like that is a big mistake on my part. But you do think, it's a good way to track them, this, that, they'll need it and all this stuff. Even schools, sometimes they've been asked to take out their phone to play some kind of educational game with the class. And I don't really like that, to be honest with you. What age do you think that kids should have phones then?
I think that would vary from parent to parent. I think it would vary on, your child's maturity level, their level of understanding, the kind of relationship that you have with them. Because look, the reality is you can't protect them from everything. So when they do have a phone, they are going to come across content which is not appropriate, content which is a bit scary, content which is, it's just not for children, And as long as they have that kind of open relationship with you where they can say, hey mum, do you know what, oh my god, guess what, I saw this, or oh, have you seen this trend, or have you seen this, and you're having those conversations where you're asking them, what do you think this is appropriate, like what do you think about it, and just having those kind of critical conversations where you're opening up that room for critical thinking. You're not judging, you're not lecturing them, you're not telling them, do you know how wrong this is, and you're not doing any of that. But what you're doing is you're kind of opening up into their world. I think that's really important. But in the same sentence, can I just also say that we as parents have to watch our usage of the phone. Yeah. And I think that's so important. And that's what comes up a lot with my clients. And something that we practice, me and my husband, is we will have dedicated times at home where our phone is like in the hallway. We've got a little box and we put it in the hallway, and we're not using it between this time and this time. Because something that I find is my kids have said to me, well, mummy, you're on your phone. I'm like, well, I'm doing my work. They're like, well, sometimes you're not, which is true. I've got to admit. So it's not that, you never use your phone, but if you're not practicing that healthy kind of modeling of what it looks like to use a phone or use any type of technology, then naturally a kid's going to be like, even a 4-year-old is going to be like, Mama, I want the phone. I want to watch something. I want to play a game. Because they think that you're watching this entertaining thing and they're missing out on something. So yeah, I think it's not easy. It's definitely not easy trying to find the balance between, well, if you have given your child a phone, I think the relationship is really important. But if something that I do advise parents is, as much as possible, try to delay letting them have the phone in their bedroom.
Yeah.
I think that has to be a boundary, because then when the doors are closed, we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's being consumed. We don't know who's being spoken to. I'll show you a really funny story. So one of my girls, they wanted to play this game on the iPad, and I said to them, I showed them this video. I said, look at this little boy. He was playing this game. I can't remember which game it was on the iPad. And he was talking to someone who he thought was another child. But actually, it wasn't another child. It was like an 80-something-year-old man. And now my kids, they think it's a joke, right? So every time they're playing a game, they're like, Mum, I promise it's not a 70-year-old man. And they think it's really funny. But, you know, it's things like that we are very fearful of, because we've heard real life stories. So I think, yes, allow the usage where you feel appropriate as a parent, where you know the maturity level of your children, but also those boundaries still have to be there, because ultimately as a parent, you're there to protect them.
And these smartphones and things like that are very addictive. I mean, they're addictive for adults as well. So that's what I find, the pull of that device is so strong for kids that they just can't actually get off of it. And it's, I go to family gatherings, and whereas like before kids used to play and talk and stuff, especially teenagers, now they'll be at the gathering, but they'll be on their phone.
Yes.
They'll say hello and still be on their phone. And I can't, I actually hate that. I hate that.
Yeah. Do you know, it's the dopamine. And it's the same for us as adults as well. I was having this conversation the other day. It's the addiction to the dopamine. And I think we've lost the art, or the simpleness of childhood, where you can just be bored. It's okay.
Yeah.
And I think as parents, we forget that it's okay for our children to just have that downtime, that unstructured time, that just being bored time, where they probably do your head in and tell them that they're bored, because my kids do that. And I'm like, well, do you know, when I was bored, I used to do the most amazing things, and you leave them for 5 minutes and they're just off doing something else. We've got to be okay with giving them that time. And for me, I feel really sad about it, because I think looking back at my childhood, those were the best times. And I always say that, you know, I'm trying to give my kids a 90s childhood, because it was just the best, where you wasn't so focused on, you know, the phone. And even now, like, let's not just blame the kids, let's also look at us as adults. You know, sometimes when you go out with friends, you realize you're all sitting together, and actually you're like, oh, let me just check one thing on my phone, and suddenly you're scrolling.
It pulls you in. It literally it pulls you in. It does absolutely. I've seen some people though, the kids are 2, they're on an iPad, or to make them eat their dinner, they have to go on an iPad to eat their dinner, or they're going to have a tantrum, so I need to pacify them and let them watch, I don't know, Cocomelon or whatever people are watching on an iPad.
Cocomelon.
It's what?
It's a drug.
I mean, it's got a bit of a hypnotic quality about it, to be honest with you, what I've seen of it. Is that damaging, do you think? I mean, I know, like, you're Montessori trained, aren't you?
I am,
and I don't know what kind of, you might have a different stance to other people on this, but what do you think about that, like pacifying toddlers, for example, using screens?
I think, you know, everything that I say, it's not coming from a place of judgment. It's not coming from a place, it's coming from a place of, we need to look at what this is doing to children. And I think toddlers have no business to have any sort of screen in their face, to be honest with you. And I think if we're very honest with ourselves, a lot of the reasons why we use the screen, especially for young children, it's for our own convenience. Yeah. As in, it just makes that process easier for ourselves. You know, if we're out and they've got the iPad in front of their face, if we're trying to feed them. But in the same sentence, you know, and that doesn't it's not okay. That's not healthy at all. However, in the same sentence, I am going to say that I understand, but I get it, because we as parents, we're parenting in a world, in environments and situations where we're literally wearing the hats of 12 people. I say this everywhere I speak. I say that, you know, our parents, they had their grandparents, they had their cousins, they had their aunties, they had their uncles. We weren't parenting in this nuclear bubble, which is very alien, by the way. Developmentally, it's not normal to parent like this. You're supposed to have other adult attachments who, you know, help you, maybe not on a day-to-day basis, but who are there and who are around and are, you know, I always say, if you're an auntie and you're helping your niece and nephew, that's also a form of mothering as well.
Yes.
You know, where you have that support system. So I think this whole influx of, you know, technology and iPads, essentially it's because we're very pressured and we just look for the convenience because we're so stressed out ourselves, but it doesn't make it okay. That's my opinion.
What are some parenting trends that you think people need to drop right now? Okay,
it's the gentle parenting without the boundaries, because that is raising very disrespectful, entitled children. There is a very, very, you know, I have a lot of friends who are teachers in schools, and we always have this conversation. They say to me, Maryam, this gentle parenting thing has got to stop, because some of the children in school, we don't have time to, you know, they're having these huge behavioral problems, and we don't have time to sit there and say, I know you're upset, and I know you know, we don't have time to do that. So it's, yes, validate your children's emotions. Of course, absolutely do that. Yes, say that you understand. However, if the behavior, I always say, so all feelings are okay. You're allowed to feel angry. You're allowed to feel like that, but all behaviors are not okay. You know, and that's where boundaries come in. So first, let's drop the no boundaries thing with this gentle parenting thing. Let's actually practice what gentle parenting really means, and that includes boundaries. Secondly, I'm going to have to think about this. Parenting trends we need to drop.
And let me see if I actually wrote a few.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think so we talked about being your kid's friend.
Yes.
Micromanaging. What about the something that what people do now is making separate meals for each child in the family, and if you have like 3 or 4 kids, it's quite people do this.
Wow.
I mean, it's not only for allergies, by the way.
Yes.
So their kids have no allergies, and people are doing this. Are we making a rod for our own backs?
I think we are. I like that you said that. Obviously, it's not just for allergies, because there are children who are,
exactly,
you know, neurodiverse, and they genuinely can't eat the other things. You know, look, I think maybe this is where we have taken it a little bit too far, where it's, you know, I say to my girls all the time, and I'm more than okay to admit this, that, you know, Mama, I don't want to eat, so we made dal. Mama, I hate dal, I don't want to eat it. I'm like, well, this is what I've cooked, and if you're really, really hungry, then this is what you're going to eat. And they eat it.
By the way, Mama, I hate dal is probably one of the most used sentences of British Asian children.
It is.
I said it myself. I was like,
So
oh
did
my
I.
God, am I in a jail or a hospital? Now I'm like, eat dal, it's so good. Okay, so that whole thing of like, this is what it is. We're a family, this is what we eat, right? Okay.
Yeah, or if you're finding that problem is coming up consistently, then get the kids involved in the meal planning. I mean, I do it all the time with my kids. I'm like, okay, you know what? This is a week. What are we going to make? What would you like? Obviously, I can't put every single thing within there, but what would you like? And if your kids are of that age where they can actually help you make the meal as well, get them involved. So yeah, obviously include them, but when something has been made, it's been made, and, you know, let's all eat it together as a family, even if we don't like it very much.
Because I think some people are really scared that their kid is not getting A, enough to eat, and B, enough nutrition. So then they're like, oh my God, but you don't like that. Oh my God, let me quickly make pasta for you so you have something. Do you know what I mean? So it's coming from love. I know it's coming from love, but then our parents didn't do that.
Yeah.
And this is one of those times where I am going to use that sentence. We turned out fine in terms of we're actually, you know, here. We didn't wither away and die, right?
Yes.
Because somebody made dal and we didn't want it, and then we sat in a corner and starved, right?
Yes.
So, but when there are, though, kids who are particularly picky eaters, right? And they will literally have that determination of, I'm not going to eat this, no way. And if my mum says, I sit here, I'll sit here all night and not eat it, right? What do we do in situations like that? Because there are some kids who are like that, right?
Yeah, then you need to practice flexibility, obviously. Then it's, you know, like, should I make you a sandwich, or do you want to eat some fruit, or do you want to eat what? Give them options, or ask them what they would like to eat. If it's something ridiculous where you have to make up a whole meal, it's going to take you an hour. Obviously, we have to be sensible with it. But I think with the picky eaters, what I would say is the involvement. So the involvement in what are we going to eat that week, and the involvement in making the food. Sometimes that really helps children with the process when they've kind of seen the process and they've helped out as well. So it makes them feel like they've been involved, and it gives them that drive to kind of like want to try it as well. But yeah, I think there is a flexibility to practice. Obviously, we're not going to sit there and say you have to eat it and you're not going to bed until, or actually, you know, you're going to bed hungry, God forbid any of us do that with our kids, you know. There's always there's room for flexibility where, you know, we'll have a bowl of cereal then, you know, if you're really, really not going to eat. But I think we know our kids very well. We know the ones that are actually going to eat it in the end, and we know the ones that are not going to eat it in the end. So yeah, practice that flexibility. It's important.
So Maryam, you have 3 kids. I have 3 kids. It's very difficult, right, to manage that. 3 different personalities, 3 different people's lives, and the time with them. How do you kind of, as a parent, split your time between the kids so that you have time with all of them? And do you think that you have the same relationship with all of them? Is it possible to have the same relationship with all your kids?
No. I genuinely believe that every single child, you will be a different kind of parent to every single child. They will require you to be a different kind of mother. Your parenting style will differ because of their temperaments, because of their personalities, because of what they need from you, because of their love language. So I'm definitely a different type of parent to every single child. And I actually had this conversation the other day. So I think for a lot of us as mums, we worry about the amount of time that we spend with our children, especially if we're working mums, you know, life is wild. So I would say don't focus on the amount. So it's not the quantity of time that you're spending with them, because you could be a stay-at-home mum, but you could be emotionally very disconnected. So you could be physically present, but emotionally you're so disengaged that actually that time you're spending with them is not very beneficial at all to you or them. So focus on the quality of time that you're spending with them. That could simply be like 15 to 20 minutes every single day. And you know, they actually say that the most important times for your kids are in the morning, like before they're getting ready for school, and at bedtime. And that's like, what, 20 minutes each, maybe 15, 20 minutes each. So that's what my mindset shift is. I try and focus on the small kind of pockets of time with my kids and making sure that I'm emotionally present. So my phone's away, I'm not distracted, I'm trying my best not to think about, you know, what I'm doing tomorrow. Because I think there is also this pressure, because we have so much information. It's like, you've got to constantly be present. You've got to be constantly tuned on with your kids. Like you know, and it's impossible to do that every single day. So don't put that pressure on yourself, but think about the quality of time. What does that look like? And what are you doing during that time? Is it playing a board game? You know, when they get older, is it simply just watching their favorite show with them? Or what are you doing during that time? And just be very intentional with that. That's what I do.
Yeah, it's good points. Yeah, I find that at bedtime is the time when my kids want to tell me their entire life story. So I've sometimes been in my bed and I've got my 2 teenage daughters there telling me everything, and I'm just, because I want to be like, okay, I'm really listening, like having to keep my eyes open, so I do that. So, you know, like one of the things that I think everybody just wants in this day and age is to raise well-adjusted kids. How do you think that we do that? Like, simple rules, what are the main things that we need to keep in mind to do that?
Anytime that we want to correct them, anytime we want to discipline them, always focus on the connection before. So the connection simply being, I know you're angry, I know you're upset, you know, and then have whatever reminder or that we need to give them. I'm going to go back to the fact that it's a quality over quantity when we think about the amount of time that we're spending with them. Thirdly, always keep room for open communication, no matter what happens. You know, if something terrible happens outside of your teenager and they've done something they shouldn't have done, we're not saying that when they come home, we say that that's acceptable, what they've done, but always, never, ever, you know, I always say to my girls, and I think I heard this somewhere, I say to them, you know, there's nothing that could stop me from loving you. I might be disappointed. There might be times when I'm disappointed. Of course, I'm human. But there's going to be nothing that you can do that's going to stop me from loving you. And I imagine going into the world with that, knowing that your parents, I'll get goosebumps, but knowing that your parents think that, you know, it's life changing, and you go in with such healthy self-esteem and confidence, knowing that that's what your parents. So I think 3 things, and then fourthly, and this is probably more about us as parents, is you don't take that pressure off yourself, because you are wearing the hats of 20 people, and it takes a village not only to raise children but also yourself. So scope out those people. You know, we've got the wonderful world online now as well as offline. You know, scope out your community. Your community might not be 10 people, it might simply be 3. It might not be your family, it might be friends. Those 4 points.
Okay, cool. I want to talk a little bit about homeschooling and why you have chosen to homeschool your kids.
Yes. Okay. You know, honestly, Rena, if you would have asked me like 15 years ago, I would have said, you're absolutely nuts. You're mad. What do you mean?
I mean, I'm kind of thinking you're nuts now. I just had a taste of it in lockdown. I haven't recovered yet.
Do you know what though? I always say that homeschooling period in COVID wasn't really homeschooling, because I think there is a misconception of homeschooling that homeschooling means that you stay at home, but obviously that's not what it means. I don't like to use the word homeschooling, by the way. I prefer to use the term home educating, because schooling is we're not replicating school at home. That's not what we're doing. So educating is different from schooling, if that makes sense. So why I decided to homeschool? Okay. Interestingly, I have a lot of family in education. My mom's a teacher in a private school. Yeah. So even myself, I went through training to be a Montessori teacher. And simply the reason is because, bless the teachers, can I just say, doing the most important work. And I always say that teachers have the most hardest job out there, I would say, because their 9 to 5 doesn't just stop. They go home and do so much. So this is not about the teachers, but this is about the education system. I think the education system is very poor. If you compare it to other education systems, if you look at, European countries such as Finland and all those other countries that don't start school till 7, and you see how well their children are doing, not just academically, but, emotionally, very, very well-rounded. So for me, it was kind of like, well, okay, I don't want that for my kids. And if I can provide them an education at home and give them opportunities that they wouldn't have having gone to school, if I'm able to do that, then that's what I'm going to do. And I'm still here till today doing that for the kids.
You're looking fresh as well.
I don't feel fresh. But thank you. I mean, it's because it's a lifestyle, I would say. It's not something that, you start at 9 o'clock, finishes at 3. Okay. But obviously with the girls going into their GCSEs now as well, though, we are having to take it that little bit more formally, where they do have that formal time. And can I just also say that I don't do all of the teaching. Like, they have tutors.
Right.
So it's, especially when they get older, it's not something that's on your head, because as a working mum and a homeschooling mum, like, I can't do it all. So yeah. Okay,
so they have tutors as well.
Yes.
What about the social aspect though?
Yeah. Okay.
Are they missing out on
I'm glad you said that. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions, isn't it, with homeschooling? So we have clubs, we have groups, we have, obviously play dates. There's so much out there for home educated children. You know what? I'm going to be controversial, and I'm also going to say that a lot of people say this about homeschooling, but actually I don't believe that socialization is being forced into the same peer groups, at school. Is that really socialization? Because I remember going to school, and when I was talking with my friends, I was like, you're not here to chat, you're here to do your work and focus on your work. So actually I would probably argue that our homeschool children more socialized than children who go to school, because then you have the opportunity, even something simple as going to the library and talking to the librarian and the shopkeeper, and then you're having to meet your friends, outside of term time, and then also, can I just say, biggest perk to homeschooling, going on holiday in term time.
Yes.
Biggest perk.
I can totally understand, I can totally understand. Do you have a community of other kids that are homeschooled then as well?
We do. Okay. Yeah. There's large communities, across London, outside London, where, there's, how school, in school you get trips organised, let's say to the, I don't know, recently we went to the Thames Water, kind of seeing how all that works. So that those things are organised for the kids, and they get to go and experience those things. And then obviously you have just socialisation pods type things, where you just go and you meet up together and you have a bit of fun during the day. I know a lot of people want to hear about the cons, so I'm going to be very real and just say that as well. You are with your kids 24/7. Yeah. There is that. And that has its pressure. And that's why I always say to a lot of people that, so homeschooling is not for everyone. It's not. And not everybody can do it, because you have to have that support network. You have to have the discipline where you are also taking care of yourself, because that's a mistake that I made at the beginning, where I was kind of, with my good intention, I was giving everything to my kids, and it led to burnout. And now, I'm at a place where I'm like, right, we're doing this homeschooling thing, but actually, I've got to schedule in every week something for myself, so that I am able to continually, be able to give you this education, these opportunities. So the con is, yes, you're with your kids 24/7. So you need to make sure you have some sort of support system and sanity. But apart from that, I wouldn't say there is any other con, to be honest with you. I mean, that for me, that's probably one of the,
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear about it. It's, honestly, because it seems for people whose kids go to school, it's just like, oh God, what is this? How do you... So it's so interesting to hear about it. So the last thing I want to ask you is, why did you choose to set up Black and Brown Parenting, and what do you do with that?
Okay, so the main reason that I choose to set up Black and Brown Parenting was because I noticed that there was no cultural awareness around the shift in parenting that we were trying to do. So we're trying to break these toxic cycles, and then we want to be mindful and more conscious parents. But just reading a book is not going to help you do that, because we have to, obviously, as Black or brown parents, we have to deal with our in-laws, and we have to deal with our parents who have a certain mindset. And then there's generational trauma that comes with it as well. So for those who don't know, I also have a degree in South Asian and African colonial history. So when I meshed those two together, I was like, okay, this makes sense. Why our communities are the way they are. It's not just coming out of thin air. But what I found was a lot of, let's say white-centered spaces didn't have that. There was that nuance wasn't there. So that's one of the reasons why I set up Black and Brown Parenting. And, we do coaching. You'll hear me speak at events and here on podcasts as well. And it's so fulfilling. It's so fulfilling. And yeah, I absolutely love what I do, and I just hope that we can just create a better future for our kids, but also healthier within ourselves as parents as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been absolutely wonderful having you here.
It has. Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching. I hope that this podcast has been useful for you. Please do share it. Please do show it some love and send it around everywhere. And make sure you subscribe, and catch you on the next one.